we're back from our recess, and this next question will be first directed at Jake. The Office of International Programs is facing severe cuts. As GPSA president, how will you try to protect departments that are heavily invested in graduate students?
That's a good question. You know, I think that we ran into this issue in our last debate when we were talking about the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And I think, once again, this all comes back to a question about how does this university develop its funding priorities? How do we go about developing a budget? And how are we as a graduate student community involved in that process? You know, I'll be quite blunt, now's the wrong time to be asking these questions. Because right now the budgets are signed, sealed, and delivered. The assumptions have been made, the documents have been drafted, and all the actors have a clear idea of what they want to see happen and what needs to happen. You know, a lot of this problem is driven by the fact that our state, you know, doesn't tell the university how much money they're getting until March of any given year. But at the end of the day, if we don't start rethinking how we're actually involved in the budget process, we're going to be faced with these challenges year after year. And this year it may be the Office of International Studies or the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Next year it may be something else. So that's why I've really asked for us to start thinking in regards to these issues about how we can reform the process. You know, short answer to your question, of course, I oppose cuts to organizations that provide vital services to graduate students, obviously. But the more constructive response, I think, is really calling on this university to critically evaluate how it conducts its budget process. And I think that one thing we can do and ask for, and we should do, and one thing that I would work on when elected, is to include undergraduate, graduate, faculty, and staff representation on the University Board of Regents Budget Committee. This is your Legislative Finance Committee. This is the committee that actually works and does the heavy lifting during the interim to develop this budget document. And I think that if we're not integrally involved in that process from day one, then we're never going to be able to adequately respond to these questions and really be able to influence the resource allocation process at this university. Because when we continually wait until the end of the process to bring up these questions, we're always going to be in this defensive and sort of responsive and retaliatory posture. That's why I'm sort of asking us to think about these questions in how can we get a better handle on the issues, and how can we avoid putting ourselves in these positions again. Because now at the end of the day, you know, you ask me, do I support, you know, protecting funding for this organization? Well, that necessarily now requires taking money from someplace else. And I think that if we want to get away from those discussions, which aren't incredibly productive, we need to reevaluate where we are in this process and how we more constructively engage ourselves.
Joseph.
This is definitely a question that relates to a bigger picture of diversity, and I think that that is a huge benefit to the University of New Mexico, including the law school, and I think that that's something that we need to focus on when it comes to programs like the international students, both for our own students traveling abroad and also the exchange students that come to the university. And I think what's important with looking at pictures like the idea that departments like this have it's on their radar that they may be cut or their funding reduced, I think it's important to have a perspective on that. And I feel that I come to the table with having a very diverse perspective of different groups of students in the university. I have traveled with the university abroad and within the state and across the country with different programs, and I think that that's really important, and I think I know the benefits from that. But additionally, I do know how many foreign students come to the university and the benefits that these programs also bring to both the students that come here and the students that are introduced to these other students within our university. Specifically in the residence life programs, many of these students do stay on campus, and I worked in residence life for 4 years, and I know the benefit that they can bring to the college community in general, and the idea that education crosses international borders, which I think is very important for students, especially in New Mexico, where often people don't have as diverse of an international background or perspective. As far as making sure that programs like these are not cut, and we do have priorities for programs like this, I think it's important to focus on the idea that New Mexico residents do benefit a lot from programs like these. And I think that it's important to have firsthand experience and make sure that people that have participated in these programs get to voice their concerns and their support for these programs to the administration. Additionally, I think the same idea revolves around foreign exchange students that come to the university through these programs. And specifically, a lot do bring a lot to UNM, and I think it's important to focus on statistics with the idea that a lot of graduate and professional students are foreign exchange students, and that they bring both funding research to the university and they benefit in the classroom by teaching other students. And I think what's also additionally, which is a bigger picture item, is focusing on the idea that these benefits from these programs, both from students within our university, from within New Mexico, and the foreign exchange students that come through these programs, ultimately will stay in the state. And I think it creates a much better environment, additionally, with the idea that education does cross boundaries, and I think that it ultimately helps all of New Mexico in the bigger picture.
Kate.
So just to give you an idea of the scope of the problem, OIPS received a $102,000 cut to their research and public service program, which is a line item in the state budget. So I think that the line item is twice that number. They received a 50% cut, which is $102,000. That's a lot of money. And you know, furthermore, I mean, there are sort of problems with the fact that on the instruction in general side, international students that are coming into the state are charged for the first time a $100 entrance fee just for being international students. So no other student groups receive that fee. That's just I'm going to tax you for trying to come here and you know, take advantage of the University of New Mexico's system. And I think that that's just a really bad model in terms of, you know, how much international students actually bring in. If you think about their value, first of all, they never can become in-state residents. Their entire time here, they are forced to pay out-of-state tuition. So that's just an extreme burden on them, and it discourages them from coming in the first place. Furthermore, you know, we know that $300 million of research funding comes into the University of New Mexico. That research funding is what brings international graduate students and professional students here, and it makes this university internationally competitive in terms of the research and instruction that we provide. And so I absolutely believe in saving a program like OIPS. But to address the sort of more general problem, I think that programs like OIPS, you know, need to have the assistance of GPSA in terms of coalition building and actually understanding the network across campus, because it's not just OIPS that's in danger. For example, actually, through the Student Fee Review Board process, it came to my attention that CAPS, which is the tutoring program for undergraduates that many graduate students are actually employed by, did not actually know whether they were eligible to reapply for their Title V funding as it was coming to a close. And that sort of shocked me. You know, as student leaders, we need to make sure that the constituent groups who are losing their funding know what other funding sources are available to them, not just the student fees. And in fact, CAPS had not even asked to be included in the instruction in general funding of the university, which I think is a natural step to take. And they hadn't done that. And I think that one of the things that I'd like to do as GPSA president is make sure that the information and the resources that we're aware of, because we have been part of the budgetary decision-making process at the university, gets to the groups that need to know what's going on. And I think that you know, comes in two pieces. One, we need to make sure that there are student representation. There is student representation on all the budgetary decision-making bodies, and that two, the leadership is always in constant connection with their constituents and the groups that provide recruitment and retention for students.
Well, first of all, I absolutely oppose the cuts to this program. What it does is it does not recognize this program, just as all the other programs that have been mentioned and that we've been tirelessly trying to defend lately, is the asset. They are an asset, and they bring value, and we gain value from these programs. And we're already in a future of global economy. We're already in a global world. Everything is tied in globally, everything that we do. It's extremely important to create an atmosphere of recognizing that. And what we've done with the additional fees and having the international community, student community feel as if they're being reprimanded rather than accepted as a value and accepted as an asset. And in fact, the additional fees is a form of exploitation. It's another form of taking and devaluing the importance, but more importantly also is the fact that our students are losing the opportunity to have this experience and to be able to create the career and professional path of their choice, and that's really important. But all this goes back to processes. All this goes back to information. Why are we putting out fires? Why are we reacting? As opposed to being able to have the information, we need to understand our strong revenue streams. We need to associate those revenue streams to students, to research, and we need to be able to come back with a clear analysis of our funding streams, of where in fact we have shortfalls and gaps, and how we can improve the budget process. As students, we do have that capacity. As students, we do have the ability to be able to do that analysis. We are completely, we're beneficiaries of think tanks all over the university. We have Bieber, who is a tremendous resource for us that will reinforce our students' abilities to take this data, to take this information, to take the finances and the budget, and be able and have us institute an annual review of those funds so that we're not putting out fires and we're not reacting, but in fact when we sit as decision makers at the table, we can say, this is what we have coming in, this is what's going out, here are the gaps, and guess what? We have access to the information where we can provide the resources necessary, and this is the list of the potential resources. In fact, students are in a better position to do that. Thank you.
Any rebuttals?
Yeah, just one point. I just wanted to reiterate the idea that there are a lot of organizations around the campus at UNM, and I think not a lot utilize the opportunity that GPSA possesses to be a strong voice for students. And I think that organizations and departments, including OIPS, need to utilize GPSA more to help lobby, especially at the state where they can receive more funding and where we can put a priority on programs like this. Because as a person who has experienced and had direct experience with these departments, I think it's vital that we utilize all the GPSA resources to make sure that these programs aren't reduced in funding.
Anyone?